Okay, it's a budget for elite men, prepared by elite men. Not quite. The man who helped put it together is Matthias Cormann, Finance Minister, here with Janine Perrett from Sky Business, and of course the boss of all things Canberra at Sky News, the great David Speers. I've decided to wear a tie in honour of you, dear man.
It's the first time I've seen you in a tie for a very long time.
Well, I haven't been in a courtroom for a while either. All right, Finance Minister, good evening to you.
Good to be here.
All right, let's get straight into the small business thing. How does it work? Are we right in saying that a business that makes less than $2 million and has an ABN, they qualify?
That's right.
All right. In practical terms, if I was running a lawn mowing business, can I go off and buy a hedge trimmer, a lawn mower, and each of those items are separate in the count to 20?
Yes, well, you can essentially purchase as much as you can afford, because ultimately the business has got to put up the money for several items up to $20,000 each from budget night to night until the 30th of June 2017. So we have put this measure in place for just over two years, from tonight until 30 June 2017. And really what we want business to get out there and invest, and we want business to go out there and grow and employ people.
Now also, I mean, it seemed in the press conference, in the budget lock-up, that this is the one number that you don't really care whether you get right or wrong about how much it costs the budget. Do you know how many businesses could access this from now?
Well, I mean, obviously, 96% of all businesses in Australia are small businesses with less than $2 million worth of turnover. So there's a lot of businesses out there that do qualify. Like what we're doing here is we're not spending money. We're not essentially doing what the previous government did, sending out checks. What we're saying to businesses, we want you to decide what makes sense by way of investment in your business, so that you can grow your business, so you can employ more people, so that you can help take Australia forward.
Why the 2 years? If it works really well, will you think about going further than that?
Well, let's cross that bridge when we get there. I mean, in the meantime, we want to see how it works, whether it works, and obviously we want to encourage people to make decisions now and not to wait until 2 or 3 or 4 years down the track.
So it's an incentive to really get started now. Get out there and spend.
We believe that this is a very efficient and effective way to strengthen growth at a time when we need to strengthen growth.
So this is a stimulus package, really, to get confidence back, to get business spending, because that's been one of the problems, hasn't it? The business just, especially big business, hasn't put their hand in their pocket.
Well, a lot of businesses out there do have a lot of cash reserves. We do believe that a lot of businesses have the capacity to invest in future growth. We need to continue to strengthen growth, in particular in the non-mining part of the economy, and this is a very important part of making that happen.
You're not going to use the word stimulus, though, eh?
Well, we're not spending. This is not a fiscal stimulus in as much as that we're not spending taxpayers' money. We are letting taxpayers have more of their own money. We're saying to business, we want to let you have more of your own money to make your own decisions on where you can best invest to grow your business and make it the most successful it can be to employ more Australians.
How does it differ from a system where people already buy things for their business and claim part of it back on tax? Is it about the threshold of 20,000? How does it change again in those practical terms for people?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, people in businesses make decisions every day on what to invest in and what they need to do in order to take their business forward. What we're saying, from budget night to night until 30 June 2017, there is this particular incentive over that specific period of time. That is essentially to encourage businesses who perhaps haven't been spending and investing as much as they could have to get underway.
The difference, I suppose, is that you buy a computer, you can only write it down over a number of years, can't you? Whereas this, you'd write it down instantly. Or a lawnmower, for example, it'd be over a longer period of time to write it down.
This is an instant asset rate of up to $20,000. That's right.
Now, David Lionhill sat here a couple of minutes ago, Liberal Democrat Senator, and he doesn't think you've gone hard enough. There are hardcore Conservatives who would love you to go harder, because we are in this scenario still where the country is spending more money than it is making. But you tried last year and you were handed your backside politically. Give us an example of where you have gone hard this year.
Well, I mean, our budget is measured, it's responsible and it's fair. We did make a significant effort last year, and with the benefit of hindsight, in last year's budget we perhaps probably did try to do too much at once. So really, I mean, nobody is any better off if we put forward really hard proposals that ultimately don't get the support of the Parliament and don't get the support of the community. What we're doing here is we had an economic plan going going into government after the last election, strengthening growth, creating more jobs, repairing the budget. Well, the economy is strengthening, more jobs are being created, and the budget is now heading in the right direction. We are getting the budget under control. We are going back to budget surplus under our budget in the same timetable as in last year's budget.
But what about the size of government? Because that's something that when you look at the numbers, I mean, it is still a behemoth, and it's still a behemoth that spends more than it makes. I mean, you're very responsible in that area. How have you shrunk the size of government this year?
Well, this financial year, federal government spending as a share of the economy sits at 25.9%. It will reduce down to 25.3% over the forward estimates, and the size of the public sector out of Canberra is now back down to the size it last was in 2006, 2007. So, I mean, we are making progress. We are now heading in the right direction. Yes, there is more work to be done. Maybe it would have been nice to have been further down the track. But we are where we are. We had to adapt our plan to changing economic conditions globally and also within Australia. And so we've made judgments about what is the right balance in terms of continuing to strengthen growth, continuing to create more jobs, but also getting the budget back into surplus in a responsible fashion.
Do you ever worry that some of the rhetoric does sound similar to what we heard from Labor, that things are getting worse globally? I mean, I'm sure you never thought you'd have 6 years at least of deficit, but that's what we're going to have.
Firstly, I don't accept that our rhetoric sounds like Labor's, but what I would say to you is when we came into government, the price for iron ore was at $120 a tonne. Now, 21% of our national export income comes from iron ore. When we downgraded the forecast, the assumptions on iron ore to $60 a tonne by MAIFO last year, everybody said we were being too pessimistic. Well, guess what? In this budget, we had to downgrade it further to $48 a tonne. We've lost about $90 billion in tax revenue that we had expected when we came into government. Now, the truth is, when Labor was starting to face the challenge of revenue below expectations, exactly at that point in time, they decided to ramp up expenditure by more, in particular in the period beyond the forward estimates. Permanently and structurally decided to ramp up expenditure by more, knowing that it was not funded. What we're trying to do, while we are faced with more challenging economic conditions, is to reduce spending, to get spending growth under control, and to actually bring down the size of government.
Actually, that is one of the criticisms that's being made by the economists, that you're too optimistic in your forward projections. You've seen, as David just pointed out and you agreed, things happen. We had the iron ore price, that you somehow think in your projections that this is the worst of it and it's all going to be fine from now. Some say that that is too optimistic in your forecast.
Well, we don't accept that at all. Firstly, we have a growth budget. Secondly, of course, I mean, right now we've got record low interest rates, we've got low petrol prices, we've got low electricity prices. We do have businesses out there with a lot of cash reserves that they're able to invest. Now, I mean, we are basing our revenue assumptions on an iron ore price of $48 a tonne. Now, right now, the iron ore price is $58 a tonne. It's quite interesting.
How did you hit the $48? I'm interested in that. How did you come up with that?
We had to make a judgment on 1 May as to what our forecast would be, and we looked at the average over the previous 4 weeks, and that was what we thought was a sensible way of going about it. Now, since then, the truth is that the iron ore price has actually strengthened. So, I mean, if anything, I mean, people might say that there's actually some upside risk there. The point is, we've made judgments on what we genuinely believe was the most realistic assumption. Now, sometimes people tell us we're being too pessimistic, then they tell us we're being too optimistic. The truth is, we're making the best judgment, and of course, there will be adjustments along the way depending on what actually happens in the economy. In the end, nobody actually knows. All of our predictions are always based on assumptions on what is likely to happen, and we've relied on the best available information to make those judgments.
And that's the problem. The market, unfortunately, even though you've got a path back to surplus and you've got a lower than expected deficit this year, basically when they look forward 4 or 5 years, most of the market just says, nah, no one believes the figures. Not just yours, Labor's too, because it's been so hard to hit those figures.
Well, I mean, if you look at our forecast at MAIFO and you look at our expenditure since MAIFO, you will actually see that over the current forward estimates, we're spending $7.3 billion less. So our forecasts weren't that bad. And we have actually made additional efforts to get expenditure under control, and we're continuing to build that effort over the current forward estimates.
Last question. Not only are you the Finance Minister, but obviously a Senator as well. What is the process of dealing with the crossbench? Because it seemed last year there was an awful lot that was done through the media, which meant that the rhetoric was ramped up to a stalemate very quickly. How is it different this year? Do you go into meetings from tomorrow? Have you briefed them today? How do you state the case not in front of a television.
Well, I mean, last year the new Senate hadn't actually started yet. When we had the budget last year, Labor and the Greens had still complete control of the Senate. People seem to forget that. The new Senate only came into place on 1 July. And personally, I mean, I've had lots of conversations with crossbench senators, for example, on the mining tax repeal, which Janine and I have talked about on many occasions. I mean, I was able to negotiate with the relevant and required number of Senate crossbenchers to get rid of Labor's failed mining tax, which saved us along the way about $50 billion of our bottom line, improvements in our bottom line over the decade. So, look, we are of course talking to the crossbench, and it depends on what comes up at a particular point in time. You can't talk to them about everything at once because, you know, essentially all of us have, I mean, there's only so much you can talk about on one particular day. So we're doing it sequentially in an orderly and methodical fashion. But I mean, obviously this year the Senate is in place. Last year the new Senate wasn't.
All right, Finance Minister Matthias Cormann, thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister.
Always
All the
good to
best.
talk to you.
There he is. Finance Minister Matthias Cormann, if you have a view on the budget, please fire up via Twitter. The hashtag is PMLive. Email pmlive@skynews.com.au. Plenty more guests, lots of analysis and lots of straight talk, only on Sky News.